So, the weekend this was out was a busy one, and I had a few movies I was trying to catch up on. But with everything I saw, I managed to see this one too. What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to my channel. Today we're talking about a newer theatrical release, Sonic the Hedgehog 2. Before we begin, let me know in the comments what your thoughts on this movie were, if you already saw it, or if you were planning on seeing it, and make sure to hit that thumbs up button if you like these reviews, as it helps me out immensely by getting my content out there. And if you're new here, I hope you consider hitting that subscribe button so you can stay up to date with more movie-related content like video game movie reviews on a near-daily basis. But let's not waste any more time and let's talk about Sonic the Hedgehog 2. This sees the manic Dr. Robotnik, played again by Jim Carrey, return to Earth with a new ally, Knuckles the Echidna, voiced by Idris Elba. And Sonic and his new friend Tails are all that stand in their way. This is once again directed by Jeff Fowler, and it was released in theaters earlier this month. And of course, it's a sequel to Sonic the Hedgehog, which was released in early 2020, though that feels like a lifetime ago, given it was right just as the pandemic was beginning. But I like the first Sonic. It has the distinction of being one of the few well-made video game adaptations out there. It was very charming and funny, and with the announcement that everyone from that movie was coming back for this, along with the fact it would be expanding on this world, I was pretty excited to check this out. And I will say that this time around, it feels even more apparent that this is like a video game come to life. The first movie, as good as it was, did also see a story that followed a similar structure that other live-action CGI hybrid movies follow, where it mostly took place in a real city, and it primarily was made up of human characters who had their own drama they were going through, and Sonic was just helping them out while dealing with the bad guy. But it was just a much more well-done version of those other films, giving us a mix of a charming sweetness to go along with the manic, slapstick-based humor. Still, outside of the opening, we didn't get to explore as much regarding the actual world in which Sonic inhabited, like from the classic video games. But we get a lot more of that here, with the introduction of these new characters, an expansion on this lore, and flashbacks to this other world. We still get a lot more of the same as we saw in the first movie, where it's Sonic, Tails, and everyone running around in the real world, but there's still a bit more of a balance between the real world stuff and the Sonic lore material, even if it's not perfect. And for the most part, anyone who enjoyed the first movie, I imagine they'll enjoy this as well, at least to some degree, especially those who are longtime dedicated fans of Sonic. Now, I wouldn't say I'm a diehard Sonic fan or anything. I mean, I've played the first few games on the Sega Genesis, and I didn't keep up with him the way I did with some other classic video games, like I was always more of a Mario guy personally. But I always enjoyed Sonic, and I appreciated all the additions we got to the lore in this film. Ben Schwartz is once again a lot of fun as the title character, bringing that fast-paced energy mixed with such a natural charisma that makes him such a blast to watch. And then Tails is actually voiced by Colleen O'Shaughnessy, who voiced him in the video games, and I thought that was a great choice, to be honest. Because with all these new elements and backstory getting introduced, you need someone with a connection and understanding of that material to bridge that gap between the games and the movies. Especially, as we've seen with a lot of these countless other video game movies, it's so easy for concepts that worked in the video game to get lost in translation. So I thought that bringing in O'Shaughnessy was a nice touch. But the two highlights for me were Idris Elba as Knuckles and Jim Carrey as Robotnik. I was actually surprised a little by Elba's portrayal. I knew he would be a great choice for the character, and he'd probably play him in a much more serious light compared to Sonic or Tails, but I was surprised by how the film took that super serious attitude and turned it into one of the film's long-running jokes, as he takes statements so literally, or he'd start making a grand proclamation, only for it to get cut off in an anticlimactic way. And that would be fun, and made for some great exchanges with Robotnik, who teams up with Knuckles, though tries to take advantage of his misguided efforts, as Knuckles is clearly a rival of Sonic due to the history between their ancestors that we get into, but he's also not necessarily a bad guy. He's just not the brightest bulb at times, but this partnership, which also saw the return of Lee Majjoub as Robotnik's assistant Agent Stone, was another good source of fun. And Jim Carrey is probably at his most Jim Carreyest in quite a long time, probably even outdoing his performance in the first movie. He's doing all the usual maniacal screaming and funny noises, and he has a lot of these weird little descriptions he has for everything, and he got me good a few times. Most of the laugh out loud moments for me, if they weren't from Knuckles, were from Robotnik. Carrey has said that he's probably going to retire after this movie, and if that truly is the case, this wouldn't be a bad note to go out on, as it sees him playing to all of his strengths in such a great way. And all the visuals were pretty solid. We get a lot of action-packed sequences, all bursting with color that gives this a vibrant feel, arguably even more than the first movie did. And it really added to this adventurous feel to the film, as we saw Sonic and Tails in these big explosive fight scenes and chase scenes that would make for some fun blockbuster entertainment. Also, as a side note, it was nice to see that, given the controversy surrounding the first movie CGI, where Sonic looked the way he did initially there, that the designs for everyone here all stayed true to the original characters. Like I said, it really felt like the video games came to life with all these elaborate, colorful designs. And it all made for an enjoyable enough time. And like I said, if you're a hardcore Sonic fan, you'll be sure to get a kick out of this. And if you have younger kids, you should be rest assured they'll have a lot of fun with this, as it's clear they're the target audience, especially as the film injects some lessons in there about what it means to be a hero and knowing when's the right time to make certain important decisions. And it's not completely pandering to kids, and it doesn't isolate all audiences out, but they'll be the ones who I think will get the most enjoyment out of this. But like I said, I think the general rule seems to be that if you like the first movie, then you'll more than likely enjoy this. But all that being said, this movie's also not perfect, and I did have some notable issues with it, to the point that I'd personally say I did not enjoy this quite as much as the first movie, despite the fact it went bigger and expanded upon the Sonic lore. First thing I'd say is that this definitely isn't quite as funny this time around. While I mentioned all the big laugh-out-loud moments that came from both Jim Carrey and Idris Elba, I'd say that any attempts at humor beyond them didn't always quite work as well for me. There were some solid moments from the rest of the cast, but not quite as consistent. Now, as I said, Ben Schwartz is fun again as Sonic, and he got some good chuckles out of it. But now that Sonic's a little more at ease in the real world, and he's a lot more comfortable, this sees him lean into something that I found to be an overall issue with the film, and something I'm not typically the biggest fan of with some of these updates of classic cartoon characters. The film tries so hard at times to stay relevant, or they'll have scenes based around injecting some modern flavor to it. Like, it's as if his personality at times almost solely revolves around it, as do a lot of the jokes in his sequences, even if they're not specifically made by him. Probably the most notable example of this is when Sonic and Tails enter this tavern full of people who are ready to kill them, and Tails manages to save them both at the last second by looking up this custom where they get to have a dance-off, and Sonic and Tails dance to Uptown Funk, and that's supposed to be the big joke of the scene, that they're using this modern song to save themselves. And not that I dislike the song or anything, I actually really like the song, and that's not even the worst of the pop culture references, but it's probably the most pivotal moment. But honestly, I just don't particularly care for when films do stuff like this, and you see that a lot in these live-action adaptations of cartoons, so it bothered me every time it was done here. I mean, I like a good parody film that references other movies, don't get me wrong there, but non-parody films that try injecting so many references to pop culture from that time without much else to the joke just come off as awkward, and it dates them horribly. And it especially takes away from having any sort of actual characterization based around the characters themselves. Like I said, it's almost as if the pop culture references are all that define them at times. Like, I know characterization in the Sonic games can be limited, and you need to find a way to make these characters relatable, but when expanding them to the big screen, I wished with all this lore to them and these lessons about doing the right thing that worked well enough, I just wish that with the humor, it did something else that didn't involve constantly injecting dated pop culture references so that it can complement some of these serious moments better. Like, I know those references were present in the first film too, but it feels a lot more frequent here, and it felt tiring, as they rarely felt cleverly written. And while I found the movie to be funny enough overall, this was a big reason why I didn't enjoy it quite as much as the first film. On top of the fact that this can feel pretty bloated. This runs at 2 hours, going on for about 20 minutes longer than the first movie, and I felt that runtime, primarily due to the fact that it goes in about one too many directions, and the direction in particular that brings it down considerably is a giant subplot involving James Marsden and Tika Sumpter's characters from the first movie, and their time at this wedding of Natasha Rothwell's character, who's Sumpter's sister. We'll repeatedly cut to these sequences while all the Sonic, Knuckles, and Robotnik stuff is going on, sometimes right after a pivotal moment, and it really just wasn't all that good. These sequences mostly add nothing to the story, as they primarily revolve around Marston's clunky attempts to be the show-off around Rothwell's fiancée, played by Shamar Moore, because he feels insecure about himself. These moments felt so throwaway, and it was clear they were mostly there since these characters were integral to the first movie, and they were just trying to give them something to do. The thing is, They served little purpose. Yet we cut to them a fair amount of times. And I mean, while I like James Marsden and Tika Sumpter, and Natasha Rothwell also really does what she can during these sequences as she lays into her hatred of Marsden's character throughout these sequences, these scenes were just a series of thankless, inconsequential moments. Maybe had the attempts at humor actually worked, I wouldn't have minded them so much, but a lot of the jokes were these awkward, sitcom-style disjointed setups that got no more than a chuckle out of me. The only relevance it does have is once Sonic actually crashes the wedding while being chased by Robotnik and Knuckles, and it leads to what's quite possibly one of the most ludicrous plot twists I've ever seen. I won't spoil it in case you still haven't seen it by now, but all I'll say is someone isn't who they say they are, and the way the film gives us an explanation behind a character's true intentions, it has to be one of the most convoluted, bizarre twists I've ever seen, and that's the last thing I thought I'd be saying about a Sonic the Hedgehog movie. But it was a moment that was also played for laughs, but it just didn't really work for me on any level, and it was a reason why I just didn't find this to be quite on the same level as the first. Sonic the Hedgehog 2 is a fun enough time, though I wouldn't call it quite as good as the first movie. While Jim Carrey and Idris Elba are both a lot of fun, and it expands nicely on the world of Sonic in an intriguing enough way, it can also feel uneven due to the constant reliance on awkward, clunky pop culture references, as well as an unnecessary and bizarre subplot that causes the 2-hour runtime to feel bloated and unnecessary. Still, despite its faults, the good outweighs the bad, but I just don't think it'll have quite as much of an appeal as the first film. If you're a hardcore Sonic fan, you'll be sure to enjoy this, but if not, and you still like the first movie, I think you'll get some enjoyment out of this as well, but just proceed with caution. Sonic the Hedgehog 2 gets a 6.5 out of 10. So let me know, did you see Sonic the Hedgehog 2, or are you planning to see it, and what were your thoughts? Did you like this more than the first movie, less than the first movie? Let me know in the comments below so we can discuss. Also, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, and share it, and for more movie reviews and film discussion, please make sure to hit that subscribe button to stay updated. Thanks for watching everyone, and keep having fun with film.